Hello and welcome to week 6 of this series on being present. I'm Catherine Strang, and if you would like to be kept informed of new videos or the rest of this series, please click on the subscribe button. Now, this week is about the mind, being present to our mind. And I'm assuming that most of you, if not all of you, are familiar with meditation or mindfulness. If you're interested in being present, you'll have done meditation, I think. And there's a common perception in meditation that in order to meditate, you're aiming for a completely empty mind. This is possible, but it would take a long time. What we're really aiming for is the ability to still the mind. Just bring stillness into yourself and into the mind. And this is not necessarily to be devoid of thought. It's just to detach a little from the busyness of the mind, slow the thoughts down, have thoughts and workings of the mind that's less intrusive, and have zero attachments to what we're thinking about. So it's bringing stillness into the process. Now, struggling with our thought processes because we're not taught how to bring stillness or calm to the mind. So when we start to do this, everything seems to come into the mind. And struggling with this through mental discipline alone, just constantly saying, oh, quiet, be quiet, stop. It's an arduous task that can go on forever and become very frustrating. And as I mentioned last week, the easiest and fastest way to become present to what is and to quieten the mind in the process is to first come into the heart. However, in today's session, I'm not going to go into the heart at all. I'm going to approach quieting the mind purely from the perspective of the mind and the higher mind. And the reason I'm doing this is to give you the way of doing it through the mind alone. And also, as some people's minds and emotional bodies are in so much difficulty or turmoil at the moment, it would be difficult for them to drop down into the heart. It can be helpful to go through this process through the mind alone first, and then practice going into the heart, where it becomes a lot easier. But there's also an aspect of contacting with higher aspects of self, which we do through the heart. But in the West, or at least the modern world, we're more used to the thought of this as going through the mind and beyond. So we're going to explore this a little today. So I'm going to go through one or two techniques for withdrawing from our thoughts, the busyness of the mind. I'll go through one technique for that, and then we'll go more deeply into a short meditation. Now, as I've often mentioned through this series, that one of the keys to setting a practice of being present and calm is to simply accept what's here right now and give up the notion that every time you sit down to practice any form of conscious relaxation, being present, meditating, is to give up the notion that a relaxed, peaceful state is what should arise. And I'll just say it again, basically what you're aiming for is to just be present and accepting to what is arising, whether it's calm and peaceful or full of drama and turmoil. So just be with what is, with acceptance. And I'll go into this a little bit more in the context of the mind. Now, it's also useful to know that we have a mental body and an emotional body. We have the physical body, the mental body, the emotional body, the etheric, and then the spiritual body. And whilst all of these interact and engage with each other, they're still entities, beings, if you like, in their own right. And what's happened in recent years on Earth is that the mental body and the emotional body have gotten too mixed up and entwined and a bit chaotic. So this act of focusing very purely on the mind, to just be in the mind, and if emotions come up, we'll deal with them, but being in the mind and separating that as much as we can, because it's not really separate fully, we come into a clearer space about where we are and who we are. And it's another reason why I do the emotions, coming into the emotional body and the somatic experience of feelings long before the mind, because we tend to think we're processing all this stuff in our head and we're not. Last week I mentioned the amygdala. It's been connected to the heart and our emotional processing center. It would be more accurate, I think, to say that the amygdala is the part of the brain that recognizes, names and observes emotions, whereas the feeling of the emotions and the processing of the emotions themselves is, as I say, a somatic experience in the body. So if something emotional does arise, then just drop down into the body and breathe through that. Now, again, I talk about emotion because it is really important to go over this point again, that we can overcome a strong feeling or emotion through mental discipline. It just doesn't work. Neither can we talk out an emotional issue or a conflict. If we're constantly talking about a conflict or an issue, there'll be a tendency to fix it in the emotional body and in our energetic body, setting up problems for the future. So it's helpful to remember that. So, and I'm emphasizing this, I'm mentioning emotions a little as we're going through the mind. I'm mentioning this here because in this month of March 2022, there's an awful lot going on. There's always a lot going on these days, but this month in particular is quite intense. It's intense astrologically and energetically on a planetary level. It's actually quite difficult and it's very conflict laden. Astrologers were predicting last year that March, the end of February, March would be full of conflict, and we see that unfolding in the world with yet another war, one of many wars. But on a personal level, I have noticed definitely that there's more conflict amongst people. People seem to be having more arguments, falling out with people. All of this is going on. For myself, I've noticed myself being more irritable and with an overwhelming desire to avoid people. I'm not avoiding people, I'm just withdrawing in myself a little, so I'm not so caught up in the feelings. Other feelings that may be present are a deep, deep sadness. So whether you're feeling conflicted, argumentative, angry, or sad, or just completely wired and tired, because fatigue is immense at the moment, stand back from it a little. And today's exercise will be a very good one for that. Stand back from a little and know that you're reacting to what's going on. And it might be pulling at or triggering deeper things within you. But if you're fairly sensitive or empathic, you'll be taking on board an awful lot of what's going on. And I know I do an awful lot of that, and I have to constantly pull back from it. So this time is a period of really taking care of your body and your emotions and your mind. And this withdrawing from the world, withdrawing from the pain and the turmoil and the drama you see out there is not a selfish act. In fact, getting embroiled in what's going on, unless you're actively called to do something physical, it's actually more selfish to become caught up and worry about it and go into loops of thought and emotion. The most unselfish thing you can do is actually taking care of the peacefulness of yourself and then projecting that peace back out there. If more people did this, there'd be less war. And I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with the massive amount of experiments that have been done with meditators across the world over the past few decades of how they lower crime rate, terrorism, wars. There was one huge experiment a few decades ago, and I can't remember where or when, but I think it was the Transcendental Meditation School. And they had several thousand, I think it was up to 7,000 people meditating in or focusing on a particular area, and the war stopped for several days as they meditated on peace. It's that powerful. So just keep that in mind as you do this. So let's do our first little exercise. And this first exercise is about simply stepping back from the external. Now, when I say external, I mean both the external drama of the outside world, what's happening outside of self, and it's also stepping back from what I would call external drama in yourself. And this I would mean as being the past or the future, projecting into the future or dwelling in the past. So we're stepping back from all of that and coming into the present moment, being very, very present and detaching. And it's not a dissociated type of detachment. It's actually about being very, very present to what is, but you're stepping back from everything other than the present moment. So we begin this one with our eyes open, and I would like you to fix your attention on a point in the room. You might need to move your screen, so try not to fix your attention on the screen, but try and look at a point in the room, more in the distance. And now bring your eyes or your gaze into peripheral vision. This is when our gaze goes to the left and the right, and we notice what's to the sides of us. So we just relax, focus on what's to the left and the right, relax our eyes. And you may notice immediately that your gaze softens as you do this. The eyes relax, and even just the act of going into peripheral vision makes you withdraw a little. So now, still in peripheral vision with a softer gaze, softer focus of attention, slowly close your eyes and continue drawing back. Now you may find this easier if you're visual or like to feel something in the body. Place your attention on that point between and about 1 centimetre above the eyebrows and feel as if you're drawing your attention back into the centre of the head. Now be in the head, don't think about observing the centre of the head, you're actually in the head. And this is easy because this is where we are most of the time. We can, of course, take our attention anywhere in the body, as you may have experienced with the heart meditations. And science has now mapped this out. If you'd like to just imagine that this focus of attention, this spark of consciousness that is you, is within a small, bright light or bright golden sphere of energy. Now, science has mapped out that when people take that focus of attention to somewhere else in the body, they actually see this tiny point of light moving about the body, which is remarkable. So we do have this ability to take ourselves anywhere we wish in the body. So once more, coming back to this, your attention in the center of the head, you've withdrawn from the external world. You're coming right into the present moment. And now move your body back slightly, pull your shoulders back, pull yourself back. Because when we're focused on the external, we tend to lean forward a little. So just pull back. Use your physiology to help this process. So be in your head. And just rest here for a few seconds. And now, as much as possible, keeping this focus on the center of the head, on the internal rather than the external, of being present within yourself, slowly, very slowly open your eyes. Now, if you practice this every day, just for a minute, as you perhaps prepare to meditate or relax, it becomes easy to do with your eyes open, just a few seconds of drawing back. If you suffer from something like anxiety, it can actually make you draw back from whatever you're experiencing going on in your mind and body with anxiety. It's a very useful tool to learn. Very simple. And I'd just like to say there's so much more about the mind, and especially about the pineal gland itself, where which is where we usually reside, that can be covered in this short session. And I'm trying to keep this short. So much more can be covered about this. And I will go into this in a lot more detail in depth with some remarkable exercises we can do when I do a course in being present. So for now, let's go into a short meditation on being the witness to our thoughts through what we've just done, and then going even higher or deeper in. And in order to bring quietness and stillness to the mind, it is extremely helpful to be able to observe the mind and the whole self from this higher perspective. Otherwise, as I've said, it is very hard work trying to quieten the mind from the perspective of the everyday conscious mind. And the benefits of doing this are huge, as we'll be less likely to get caught up in emotional pain and drama. So of course, when we do get caught up in emotional pain, it may be because something deeper or traumatic has been triggered, or you may be going through something very painful at the moment, and obviously you deal with that as best you can. But on an everyday normal level, a lot of the feelings we have that are triggered are just habitual feelings or things that are on a loop. And it just triggers off the same old response in us. So with a little discipline, we can start to move back from that. Okay, so take a deep breath in and out, and just slowly blow the air out of your lungs. Longer, slower breath, letting go. Letting go of your day, letting go of anything I've been talking about. The experience of this is key, more than the words. So making sure you're comfortable. Let your eyes close slowly as you soften your gaze. Bring your attention inwards again, inwards to that point in the center of your head. And again, slightly pull the body back as well. And just for a second or two, be aware of your thoughts. What's going on in your mind? And notice how it feels, with very little other than just slightly pulling your attention back. Notice what the thought processes, the mind is like. And now once more, bring your attention back to the center point of the head. And from this point in the center of your head, just be aware of your body as a whole. From the top of the head down to the shoulders, down to the arms, hands, through the torso, all the way down to your feet. See if you can sense the body as a whole from this point in the head. And then become aware of the space around your body, the space you're inhabiting, and your energy field that you're within. And from this more expanded, more whole awareness, from that center point in your head, again, notice your thoughts or the activity of the mind. Just be present to what's there. Just keep pulling your attention back. Being as present as possible to what you're aware of. And if the thoughts are busy, or they're fearful or judgmental or disturbing, you might find it helpful just to make short statements, such as, This thought is here and that's okay. Or I can just let this thought be. When we fully acknowledge the thoughts with acceptance, they become less attached or less sticky. Now, if the thought's very sticky, it just keeps coming back, you might find the following useful. You could say to yourself, this has, or I'm allowing this train of thought to have more space than it needs to, and that's okay. So I'm just going to leave a few moments of silence for you to just be present to the mind from this aspect of the center of the head. And again, remembering when you do this, whatever arises in your mind, simply acknowledge it with acceptance. As much as possible, let go of internal dialogue, recrimination, or judgment about what you're thinking. And now we're going to pull your attention even further back and up. And now you're going to feel as if, or simply intend, that you're going to the higher aspect of mind. You're going closer to connecting with an aspect of the divine mind that you are. This mind does not judge anything as good or bad. It's all just experience. So now, just with your intention, pull back until you're not only aware of the mind and the lower mind's aspects of the lower consciousness and ego, but you're becoming aware of its connection to the brain, the human body, of the whole body, all your bodies itself, physical, emotional, mental, etheric, spiritual. So you're observing the whole of you from the perspective of a higher aspect of self. Your higher self, or a higher aspect of mind. Witnessing the mind and its effects on your consciousness. You might feel as if you're pulling back and out of your body, observing yourself wherever you're sitting. But still with the awareness of being in the body, in the center of the mind. And there's nothing to think about or do here. And it doesn't matter if you're even remotely aware of the higher mind itself or of higher consciousness. It's the simple act of intending to move to this higher awareness and of witnessing from here that will begin to have an effect on your mind and the whole consciousness. So again, moving back out, higher up, witnessing your mind from this higher perspective. And I'll just leave you with a few moments of silence again. from this higher point of awareness, allow the knowing that you are so much more than your thoughts, so much more than the mind. Allow that thought to be there, that knowing. Your thoughts are just words passing through the mind. They've got virtually no meaning in and of themselves. So now, very, very slowly, bring your awareness back to the center point in the head, back to being in the head, your focus of attention in this center, back within the head, behind and above the eyebrows. And just be aware of what it feels like to be back here. Do you notice a difference? And then become aware of your body again. Take a deep breath in and out, breathing through the whole body, all the way down to your feet, wherever they're resting. Be aware of the space in the room around you. Any noises you can hear, any sensations you're aware of, using all of that to come back into the body, back into the here and now, normal waking awareness. And only when you're completely ready, you can open the eyes and come back to the room.